welcome to another hour of Cyberwatch with the usual suspects. Today, I'm Scott Miller, and today I'm here with Vlad, and we're going to just jump right into it. So, Vlad, last week we were ending on a story we ran out of time for, and again, it was a little bit about net neutrality. And this time it was a tech dirt story where a former FCC commissioner used Manchester bombing as a prop to claim net neutrality aids terrorism. Now, I'm going to read you his quote. A sensible question is why civilized governments do not seek to deprive terrorists of unfettered access to the Internet. Sadly, here in America, limiting access to the Internet would be illegal under the euphemistic term network neutrality. The 2-year-old experiment in federal regulation of the Internet. To its supporters, network neutrality is a bulwark of civilization, but network neutrality is also a shield for terrorists who seek to destroy civilization. Vlad comments.
So I would say that I don't think terrorists want open internet. If you look at some of the countries that are the ones sponsoring and supporting terrorism, they don't exactly have open internet access or unfettered internet access. I mean, sure, there are extremist videos being shared on some social networks, but that could be taken care of within the social network itself. I don't think limiting internet or limiting people's free access to information will stop terrorism. If anything, that's just a form of tyranny.
Yeah, and the other thing is that having sites have equal access to the Internet is not, to your browser basically, is not what is going to filter out terrorist activity if that's what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, exactly. Stopping Hulu from having as much access as Netflix will not stop terrorism.
That's true. I just wanted to comment on that because we ended on that last week, and I didn't want to leave that story just hanging out there. All right, so now let's go on.
That comment is an example of folks commenting about something that they have no idea what they're talking about, which is very common with politicians talking about technology, firearms, or actually most topics.
All right, do you have a story up for us?
Yes. So, as you know, that there's a leaker that was recently arrested. Fairly interesting story about the really high-tech way that she was supposedly able to get information out. And allegedly it appears that she printed it out and mailed it.
Yeah, and that the printers all have a code on them at the edge of the printing area that indicates the serial number of the printer and other data about the printout.
Yes, so it embeds lots of metadata. So what you're describing are just the civilian printers that have the printer serial number. Some of the printers that are in classified facilities do a whole lot more than that. They can actually encode the user that was logged on. What's really interesting is if you actually print out 2 identical documents, or rather the same document twice, they're not going to look identical. It actually alters the spacing and alters some other things to be able to differentiate between the derived copies. So you could actually trace the trail of the document as it changes hands or changes users.
Now, I was reading in research about this story that it actually is done in color. If she had copied it to black and white from her color copy, would that have masked some of the material?
It would have masked some of the data, but not all of it. I know one of the really interesting things that's done is discretely changing the spacing between the letters, at least in some of the words. Mm-hmm. So it would wipe out some of the metadata, but not all of it. Okay.
And now this brings up the main question about a story like this. Is the leaker an enemy or a hero?
So a lot of it comes down to motive and also the information that was leaked. If, for example, you look at what Snowden did, and that's making sure that Russia and nobody else had information that would actually put U.S. in danger and actually simply exposing some of the illegal programs, that I would classify as a hero. Versus if you look at what Bradley Manning did, just dumping treasure troves of data, unedited, unreviewed, that will classify as an entity because there was actionable intel that got people killed.
Okay, what about this case?
I actually have not had a chance to review what it is that actually was released.
Okay.
I don't think we know enough. Excuse me, we don't really know enough to comment. Just based on the careless nature of the way things were done, I'm not really sure what to think.
Okay. All right. We'd like your comments. Call us at 844-790-TALK, 844-790-8255, and we'll also take all of your other tech questions. All right. Next story I have is it's the end of an era. Pinboard has bought Delicious and shuttered it, so no more link sharing through Delicious. And you can see its progenitors actually in things like Reddit, and I can't think of some of the other link sharing sites off the top of my head. But
I know Bitly, Google, a whole lot of sites now jumped on the bandwagon and have their own URL shortening service now. And it's actually a great source of harvesting information because you're watching lots of people click on the link and seeing the entry and exit nodes. So it's got to be great for advertising and just for being able to target advertising and seeing who uses the links.
Yeah, and but you won't be able to add to them after June 15th. You'll still be able to see them for a while after that, and then the site will go away.
Now, is it going to be archived in the Internet Wayback Machine?
You know, I would assume so, but I haven't read any stories or anything specific about that. I guess the answer is on June 16th. Try it and see what you get.
All right.
All right. We'll be back after these messages. Welcome back. This is The Usual Suspects on Cyber Talk. 844-790-TALK, 844-8255. All right, we're taking your calls, and meanwhile, we're covering some of the cyber news. The story I have up now is Amazon discounts Prime fee for low-income Americans. And I thought this was kind of interesting. Amazon is offering a lower price for Prime for Americans that are on government assistance programs. The e-commerce giant said Tuesday it cut the price for a Prime subscription to $5.99 a month for people with EBT cards. That's electronic benefit transfer. The cards are used for disperse funds for food stamps and other government aid. It's not called food stamps anymore, but I don't know what the new name is. With the company already reaching just about every middle and high-income Prime customer it can, the only big way Amazon can grow is to bring more low-income households in. So, Vlad, do you think this is a good idea?
So I think Amazon opens up access to food and to items that might not be available in areas where some of the people live. I think overall it is a good idea. I do think that the downside is some people will rely on Amazon for the best price when oftentimes Amazon is actually more expensive than other stores. And a lot of times Amazon price actually listed higher than MSRP or retail.
Mm-hmm. I've actually noticed that, and this isn't really new, but you can look at an item several times on Amazon over a few days, and the price changes.
Yeah, so the price changes, and there's also tools that will watch the price for you and alert you when it reaches a certain peak or a certain valley, rather.
Interesting. So it's just so weird with Amazon now opening up a physical store, and then now this story. It's like Amazon, if it wasn't ubiquitous before, is well on its way to.
Yeah, I've not heard great things about the Amazon physical store. And also I think that having people that are low income shopping in Amazon is not necessarily the way to help them limit spending or have a way to help them spend their money smartly.
Well, talking about spending money, this is another story it leads into. U.S. insurers hike Tesla premiums due to higher than average claim rates. Is anyone surprised by that?
So is that You need more information. Is that due to accidents, like single vehicle accidents, or are Teslas being demolished by large metal vehicles like Jeeps?
National insurer AAA is raising its prices for the Tesla Model S and X, citing higher than average claim rates and repair costs for the two cars. According to a report from Automotive News, AA said it could raise the premiums by much as 30% for the vehicles. Other large insurers, including State Farm and Geico, told the publication they couldn't say whether they would increase their prices. Tesla itself disputes the move, saying AAA has made its decision based on faulty information from the Highway Loss Data Institute. Let's see. The crux of the matter is whether or not Tesla cars have a higher than average claim rate for crashes and collisions. Usually these averages are calculated by comparing the number of claims with similar cars. In this case, Model S and Model X are categorized as large luxury vehicles. So they're having more crashes. And those crashes are more expensive.
So the way it sounds to me is it costs more to repair that vehicle as compared to other large luxury vehicles, which
Right.
I guess would make sense. There's lots of electronic components, and you can't take it to any random repair shop. It has to go to a Tesla certified facility. There are no really third-party parts, so you're stuck using the OEM parts, which the insurance companies hate. So yeah, not really surprising.
And they also get into accidents 13% more than other cars.
Now, that is surprising, given all the safety features that they have and lane collision avoidance, automatic stopping. I'm really surprised they get into more accidents.
Yeah. Well, something they're going to have to work on at the Tesla factory.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what Tesla has to say about it if there's going to be a more detailed study on it. Because
their main thing is disputing the data, but they don't say why, at least in this story.
Yeah, I'd love to see what the data actually is. Because some of the stuff that I've seen on YouTube, some of the videos of the crashes, Teslas have been involved in some pretty spectacular crashes. But I'm sure so are other vehicles. There just happen to be cameras on board to capture them.
Yeah. All right, what's your next story, Vlad?
My next story is Apple is actually finally opening up NFC to developers, which means your next Apple phone is going to be able to do something that many Android phones have been able to do for 10 years now. And that's read NFC cards, and not just rely on QR codes for quick information sharing.
Do you think this is a change that we can expect in a lot of Apple stuff, that they're going to open up more development on the iPhone?
I don't know. I think this is another case of Apple finally catching up to the mainstream and making it look like they invented it. I think it's the way to go for contactless secure payments. Android Pay has been there for a while, and Fitbit, with its acquisition of a certain watch company, is supposed to release something in the fall. And I think Apple is just trying to stay relevant again.
Interesting. All right. I don't have much more to comment on that. I mean, I'm always glad when more stuff gets opened up. I'm looking forward to see what developers come up with. And let's see. All right, I've got the next story. This shouldn't be surprising given all the things we've been saying about net neutrality and everything else. Cable TV failing as a business, cable industry lobbyist says. Did you see this story at all, Vlad?
No, I haven't. I have had cable in the past, and I'm surprised cable is still around given the quality of service.
What do you use now?
I have fiber to the premises now.
And so do you buy television subscription at all, or?
No, I pay for streaming TV. So I watch whatever I want that's available online.
We've pretty much cut the cord. The only cable we have in is for our internet access. Everything else is either over the air or just streaming like Netflix. Anyways, in this story, the cable TV business is in trouble. In fact, it's failing as a business due to rising programming costs and consumers switching from traditional TV to online video streaming. As a business, it's failing, said Matthew Polka, CEO of the American Cable Association. Now, I should say the American Cable Association represents small cable and medium cable operators, not the behemoths. But in it, he says the cable business isn't what it used to be because of higher costs. pointing to the amount cable TV companies pay programmers for sports, broadcast programming via retransmission consent fees, and other programming. When asked about cord cutting, Polka said, "It's the video issue of our time as consumers learn they have a choice from services like Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime." So, and then he goes on to say video is certainly their worst product, but then he goes on in several paragraphs of the article that what they report is to make the argument that this is why they're fighting against net neutrality, because they want the profit to be in their broadband area since video is no longer profitable. And the other thing is that, Vlad, they mentioned what you said, higher prices and lower customer satisfaction.
Yeah, so I've noticed that the price keeps going up, or rather was going up back when I had cable. But I had no idea where that money was going to. It certainly wasn't customer support. It certainly wasn't service stability. The certain service provider that I had could not keep stable internet connection. There were constant TV interruptions. So I ended up having to switch to get more bandwidth for less money.
Mm-hmm. All right. What's your next story?
My next story is that AT&T will be allowed to stop providing landline service in Illinois, and they're pushing to be able to do it in more states.
Yeah, Nevada actually is one of the states that's allowing that. And I was surprised because it wasn't really on my radar at all. And we only have a legislature that meets every other year. So that means it didn't happen this session with 2017, obviously. It was already done. So that means it had to happen like at least 2015, 2013. And I don't remember hearing anything about it. And my real question is why, given what they said about the Illinois situation? They said that, they're losing 10% a year of people through attrition anyway. And if that's the case, in 10 years this would be done. Why are you bailing out now?
So I think this is another issue that comes down to profits. They probably felt that there was not enough profits in it. Before, they were mandated to keep the copper service, and it was essential for 911 service. Mm-hmm. And if they're allowed to drop it, that's actually going to cause a lot of low-income people to lose access to 911 service, not to mention providing E911 when cell phones are down or during adverse weather conditions.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It had to happen eventually. I mean, people are cutting cords in a lot of ways. But I'm just surprised that they haven't let it happen through attrition, because they still have the protection of, public utility status, that they're able to recoup whatever they put in.
So they couldn't drop it under attrition simply because they're mandated to provide E911.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
So that just means they could charge people more for the ones that do have the landline. So right. I guess, they could have done it through attrition by charging old ladies $50 a month to have 911 access.
Yeah, that would go over well.
Which is why they're just doing it by being allowed to drop service.
Yeah. Do you know if they have it in Utah?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
I'd be curious to see where it goes, what happens state by state. But I saw the news story come across about Illinois. All
right. And we're going to cover more stories. And, of course, we're always ready to take your calls at 844-790-TALK, 844-790-8255. And we'll be back after these messages.
Hi, I'm Bill Kendall. I've practiced law in Northern Nevada for over 25 years, and I specialize in representing injured people in their fights for just compensation and in representing parents in custody and visitation disputes. I've tried over 20 jury trials to verdict. I've arbitrated or mediated hundreds of personal injury cases on behalf of clients to successful conclusions, and I have personally handled every single case from start to finish. I am also a court-appointed mediator for the Washoe County Family Court Division, where I help parents negotiate custody and visitation plans. With me as your attorney, you can rest assured that your case will be handled competently and that I will be responsive to all of your needs and questions. My goal in every case is to have clients that are satisfied with the outcome of their case and who would recommend me to others. Give me a call at 775-324-6464 or visit my website, billkendalllaw.com. My number again is 775-324-6464.
Call Spirent Dental because you're worth it. They can make your smile perfect. You're gonna love your new smile. Spirent Dental for a perfect smile. Spirent Dental has a $125 special that includes a cleaning, x-rays, a free Sonicare toothbrush, and a free cosmetic makeover consultation. Spirent Dental for a perfect Call 827-1113.
Healthcare is a phrase that gets tossed around a lot these days. From politicians in Washington to your physician right here in town, everyone seems to have a different conception of what it means. At Zephyr Wellness, it means recognizing individuals as human beings and meeting them where they are. It also means helping people identify and solve their problems, rather than merely coping with their symptoms. The team at Zephyr believes that good mental health care deals with the whole person and not just outward behaviors. Hundreds of people across all demographics have already discovered Zephyr's compassionate and talented clinical team. If you're struggling with family issues, substance abuse, depression, anxiety, or are just simply not where you want to be in life, call Zephyr Wellness at 775-525-1616 to schedule an appointment or visit the website at www.zephyrwellness.org. Zephyr Wellness has offices in Reno and Silver Springs and proudly takes most insurance plans. Again, that's 775-525-1616 or zephyrwellness.org.
So you think this chip is nothing to worry about? Well, at SafeLight, we know sooner or later, every chip will crack. These friends were on a trip when their windshield got chipped. So they scheduled at SafeLight.com. They didn't have to change their plans or worry about a thing. I'll see you in a little bit. And I fixed it right away with a strong repair they can trust. Plus, with most insurance, a SafeLight repair is no cost to you.
Really?
Being there whenever you need us, that's another SafeLight advantage.
SafeLight repair, SafeLight replace.
All right, 844-790-TALK, 844-790-8255. You're at Cyberwatch with the usual suspects. We want to take your calls. Vlad, what do you have up for us?
Our next story is looking at a few of the verdicts that came through within the past weekend, some going back slightly further, about remembering the passwords for your cell phone, or rather turning over the correct password for your cell phone. We've had a few rulings that came down on different sides of the issue. We had one Florida judge that throughout the case and throughout the evidence, after the two defendants claimed that they forgot the passwords to their cell phones. I believe it was iPhones in their cases. And one of the factors is that came to play was actually that the cell phones were in custody for around 9 or 10 months by the time that they were asked again for the passcodes to the phones.
So the court found it plausible that that they would forget a password after 9 months.
Correct. And there was another ruling around the same time, I believe it was a few days just before that, where a man was sentenced to 6 months contempt of court, and the judge offered to drop the contempt of court sentence if the correct cell phone password was turned over. The man claimed that he did provide the correct cell phone unlock code, but the police said it did not work. So
that's a tougher one.
Yeah, to me that actually seems even more plausible. At least you'd have some guess as to what it might have been.
Yeah, and this reminds me of another story that or another verdict that's come up several times that we've talked about, and that is that if you don't use a password, if you use a biometric, that you can be forced to participate in the biometric unlocking your phone. You know, they can force you to give your thumbprint. They can force you to stand for a retinal scan on a Samsung phone. But they can't. But as you can see, they can't force you to give up a password.
So yes and no. So yes, the fingerprint can be taken from you by force. But that only works the first 24 hours. After 24 hours, that does not work anymore. You still need the password. Same with facial recognition or voice recognition or any of the other weak authentication methods. However, there is a man in jail in Pennsylvania, going on over a year now, I believe, at this point, because he's refusing to provide access to his encrypted hard drive. And he is being held on CP charges. So the federal government said it's a foregone conclusion that there's CP on his encrypted hard drive. And he's refusing to provide the password, claiming that would violate his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination and testifying against himself. So a lot of the cases.
Yeah, so they're all over the map. Did you brought that up? Did he have any biometric, or it's strictly a password case?
It's strictly a password case. It's an encrypted external hard drive.
And then, of course, just on a side note, we talked about this as a stream of consciousness on these stories, because you're talking about child pornography. The Best Buy case, where the Best Buy was actually scanning the blank area of hard drives, looking for child pornography, and then contacting the FBI, and in some cases, supervisors were taking bounties from the FBI. Best Buy came out with a statement this week denying that their employees are in cahoots with the FBI. All the evidence about these activities to the contrary.
So Best Buy may not be in the loop, but individual agents and individual employees may have an agreement worked out.
Yeah.
And it does appear that at least some employees were paid for this, and they were illegally searching the hard drives of the people that entrusted them a hard drive or entrusted them a computer for repairs. They were going above and beyond what they were authorized to do with a computer.
Yeah. So don't use Best Buy. Go to a reliable private company like Geeks on the Go here in Las Vegas.
I think of all the reasons to not use Best Buy, this would be the least of them.
All right. I have a story. This is off of Tech Dirt, and the headline is DEA deploying powerful spyware without required privacy impact assessments. And basically what the story is saying, and I'll quote, "It's not just the FBI that can't seem to turn in its privacy-related paperwork on time. The FBI has pushed forward with its biometric database rollout despite the database being inaccurate, heavily populated with non-criminals, and without statutory required privacy impact. Unsurprisingly, another federal law enforcement company has felt too compelled to produce privacy impact assessments for privacy impacting programs. Joseph Koch reports that the DEA's privacy paperwork is landing far behind its intrusive efforts. The Drug Enforcement Administration did not carry out a privacy impact assessment with particular system and technology when it bought and ultimately used malware from the Italian surveillance company Hacking Team. So they bought a third-party tool, didn't do the assessments, and lo and behold, they're out there hacking into people's computers. Privacy experts say the news is consistent with the DEA's repeated failure to complete such assessments around the agency's surveillance programs." So, especially with some of the stuff about NSA programs and all the things where they go, "Oh, trust us that the database, can only be accessed under certain conditions." Should we see a theme here and begin to doubt that?
So this isn't just hacking into people's machines. This is using, if I understand this correctly, it's using malware which could be replicating semi-autonomously and spreading across machines, which may target people who are not even the subject of investigation. It's essentially just throwing a huge dragnet and hoping they don't bring down a large production network or anything too sensitive.
Yeah, I just was a little disturbed that we had another agency, doing this. And this brings up we talked about this, and we're on different sides of this, I think, on the idea of the federal government buying malware to use. And I'm not as comfortable as I recall as you were the last time we discussed this topic.
So I am for the government having malware, essentially for the same reason I'm for the government having nuclear weapons and arms. I see them as one and the same. And it should be used the same. For the same reason you don't shoot an AR into the crowd. You don't just start spreading malware and hope that you snag some of the people that you're targeting.
Yeah.
So having an exploit means that you could exploit and target a specific system, gain access to a specific system that you believe you need to gain access to, and you have the proper court authorization to do it, or it is your enemy country's machines, which, again, you're lawfully allowed to target.
Yes. All right. 844-790-TALK, 844-790-8255. We'd like your calls. And let's see, what's the next story I have? Go to my bookmarks here. And this is off of the AP. It's just a small story that I just thought was a little offbeat technology, and that is Toyota was working on a flying car, and they basically bought a startup backed by the Japanese automaker, and they had a test model out, and they were hoping that this car will be able to fly to light the Olympic torch in the 2020 Tokyo Games. However, in this particular instance, the car rose up to about eye level for a few times and then crashed to the ground. So the first flying car kind of was a flying boat.
Well, in all fairness, the first flying plane was also a jumping jack.
Yeah. I've always thought more than driverless cars, that's what I wanted, was a flying car. And actually, I've made up in my mind a conspiracy theory that flying cars already exist, but the government is holding them back from us. And the reason for that is, imagine traffic accidents happening with the frequency that they are now on roads, happening in the sky. And the fact that if it happens in the sky, the damage and fatalities would probably be much higher and much more often, and that's why we don't have flying cars.
So I have a few thoughts about it. So first of all, imagine traffic accidents happening in 3D at higher speeds. If you have a fender bender now, cars come to the ground or come to a halt on the side of the road. If you have an accident, the cars drop out of the sky onto below them.
Yeah,
but also think of the revenue. Local municipalities and state police make tons of money from enforcing random traffic laws, enforcing speed limits when you're the only vehicle on the highway, all sorts of things, which would disappear with flying cars.
Well, but wouldn't there be new things to enforce?
Yes, but it would be more difficult to do. Right now, you could sit along a stretch of road and just watch it. But if the entire sky is the highway, then it would be significantly more difficult to patrol it.
That brings up an interesting question. Just as long as we're on the flying car here for a moment. So what do you envision a flying car environment would be like? Would there be like lanes in the air, or exactly how would it work? Would it be more like air traffic now?
I think the only way it would work is with driverless cars, because I wouldn't trust a whole bunch of humans who fail at driving out to fly. And as someone with a private pilot's license, I would hate to see them more inconvenient with humans flying. But yes, I think with driverless cars and having predefined lanes, but in 3 dimensions, I think it would work fairly smoothly. Instead of trying to have an 8-lane or a 12-lane highway, you would essentially have corridors that you follow. And there would probably be certain areas where you could kind of free fly because there may not be an established corridor.
All right, we're going to take our break, but first I want to remind you, 844-790-TALK, 844-790-8255 for your calls and any of your tech questions. We'll be back after this. Usual Suspects Cyberwatch is brought to you by Spirent Federal. Cyberflood from Spirent is the world's highest performing Layer 4 through 7 testing solution. Built with development teams in mind, Cyberflood has an easy-to-use interface that allows users to choose from a library of tens of thousands of realistic applications and attack vectors, including fuzzing, malware, and DDoS for unparalleled realism and scalability. It is capable of generating real traffic from anywhere in the world, allowing you to test your content-aware network applications. Visit Spirent Federal or call 801-785-1448 to speak to a Spirent Federal Systems representative today to learn more about how Cyberflood can help improve the integrity of your network. All right, 844-790-TALK, 844-790-8255. And you're here with the usual suspects on Cyberwatch. And let's see, what's the next story that we have? Vlad, why don't you pull one up?
Well, I actually was hoping to switch the story you were talking to me about before, and that's Google domains.
Yes. Okay, so, Google domains in the business environment is what we were talking about. And I was wondering what your thoughts were, because a lot of security now, the thinking is that you really need to do a lot more of detection than prevention, because it's kind of like you will get broken into. The issue is do you know it, and how long does it take you to react? And so there are things like snort that you put on a network and stuff like that to do detection. But that's kind of defeated when you have end-to-end encryption, and that's the kind of thing that mail from Google domains provides to businesses. So I was wondering what your feeling about the trade-offs are on that kind of situation for a business.
So first of all, when you invite Google into your network, you give up a lot of control over your data. Google is sucking up a whole lot of metadata and the actual content of your messages. Your messages are encrypted end-to-end inside the organization. So let's say you are organization A and you have Google domains providing email for you. The second you send an email to organization B, which does not use Google domains, you lose the benefit of end-to-end encryption. If a federal organization is investigating your company and you are running your own mail service, the federal government has to get a subpoena. They have to come to you to request the data. Whereas if you're using Google, the federal government may take a shortcut and request the data directly from Google, essentially stopping you from being able to defend yourself in court and trying to stop the federal government from grabbing data, or even preventing somebody from grabbing data for civil litigation purposes.
So any other issues with using Google domains?
To me, those are the biggest ones, and I believe they're fairly huge. For smaller organizations that simply can't afford the overhead of running their own mail server, which, if done right, does take up a considerable amount of time, Google is great for that. But anything sensitive, anything really proprietary, I would say would need to be encrypted even if sent within Google. So, for example, you were to use PGP, which, again, isn't easy for most users, combined with Google, you could have true end-to-end encryption for within your own users. So your message would still be encrypted even though they're sent through Google, and you still have all the convenience of just being able to use the Google web interface.
All right. And then staying along that same line, because you just mentioned PGP, would you say PGP is really still state-of-the-art for personal encryption?
If using sufficiently large keys for most purposes, for most users, I would say it's more than sufficient.
Okay.
It's
all
like
right.
I said before, if somebody's determined enough and they have enough resources, you will be compromised.
Right.
It comes down to not pissing off a big fish big enough that has access to those resources and is willing to devote them. Like if you're emailing out NSA secrets, PGP may not be enough to keep you safe. May.
I only piss off big fish. There's no other way to go. All right. Sticking to smaller businesses that cannot, necessarily afford their own mail servers and things like that. The other thing that comes up is a lot of small businesses are actually using, small office, home office routers, and really sometimes home routers in their small businesses. I know we agree that that's a bad idea, but what would you recommend?
I don't think there's one solution that'll work for everyone. It really comes down to somebody's needs. But one thing I recommend to people is not using Wi-Fi. Unless they really, really need it, I think a wired connection is a really good start. Looking at a nice modern router from a reputable manufacturer that has regular firmware updates, keeping up with those firmware updates. If you have the money, actually go with a well-managed solution. Don't really want to plug any individual companies, but I have a solution from one of the big manufacturers that's typically used in enterprise that I use for my home office. Simply because I feel more comfortable being able to set up VLANs. So, for example, my thermostat in my house isn't trying to interfere with my security cameras, and they're not trying to interfere with my VLAN, and they're not trying to interrupt with Skype traffic or encrypted email traffic. So even if anything is compromised, so my compromised thermostat can't try and snoop in my encrypted emails.
Or order supplies for your refrigerator.
Oh, if somebody messes with my refrigerator supplies, that would be at the end of the day, basically.
All right. Staying on that thing for small businesses, and I know you do, you work primarily with large businesses, but some things they have in common is they all need some kind of endpoint protection, at the desktop or the workstations that they're on. How can people, pick from the big providers? Is there really any difference between Norton, between Symantec and McAfee and Malwarebytes and things like that, or is it just whatever you're comfortable with?
So yes, there's a difference. I actually saw the results of a shootout posted by several incident response folks. I don't remember who the winner is currently, simply because it's not of much interest to me. But the results of a shootout had a definite winner. One of them did detect more. One of them did take up less resources. So I would definitely urge people to do a little bit of research and look at some of the comparisons. But they're not all the same.
All right.
So essentially, endpoint protection is important for large organizations. It's important for insurance purposes. But some of the more senior security folks may actually be hampered by it. So, for example, I know if you're working for a security org and you're playing with malware samples, you may actually not be running malware protection on your machine because that would interfere with you receiving samples and working with them.
Right.
So I actually don't run anything on my workstation because I need the malware.
Yeah. All right, let's see. What do I have? Another story? Do you have one more story?
Yes, this brings us to a little reminder about something happening down in your neck of the desert.
Okay.
Do you know what's happening July 27th through July 30th of this year?
That would be Black Hat, wouldn't it?
No, that would be DEF CON 25. Happening in Las Vegas, Nevada. Black Hat, so that covers Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Black Hat is during the week prior to DEF CON.
Right.
A lot of corporate types are going to be at Black Hat, but a lot of folks who are paying their own way and don't expect them to be at Black Hat, but showing up for DEF CON is certainly very feasible on your own out of pocket. And I would encourage everyone to do it if you're interested in learning more about network security. And if your corporation or your job may sponsor you for Black Hat, I would absolutely urge you to come out for that as well.
Yeah, I've actually attended, except for one, I've attended every DEF CON since DEF CON 4. And,
oh, wow. My first one was 9.
I beg your pardon?
My first one was 9, so you have me beat by a long shot.
Yeah, I went to 4 and then I missed 5. And then 9, you were starting when it was at the Alexis Park, right?
Correct. Yes, it was at the Alexis Park.
Yeah, and which I regard just as kind of the golden days of DEF CON, although they've recovered now to kind of find their way being back on the strip and stuff.
I actually think it's gotten a little too organized. I mean, do you recall the days of Full 3? That can't happen at a modern DEF CON.
Actually, I was doing the Usual Suspects radio show from the Alexis Park, and we would be in a suite during DEF CON doing the show live. And so, yes, I have fond memories of the Alexis Park. But there's a lot of serious security work discussed there, and I agree with you. People should come out for it.
This year's show is actually going to be broadcast live from the floor of Black Hat.
Wow.
Yes, Andrew and I are going to be out there and hopefully the show is not going to be at the same time as my Black Hat presentation.
You're doing a presentation? What's your topic?
Yes, we're going to be talking about hunting down the sources of GPS jamming and what some of the folks have been doing and what we believe some of the motives are. And we're going to be releasing some new tools.
Okay. And of course, your first interview is going to be on Cyberwatch when you finish your talk.
The answer is maybe. I've already had one interview, but it hasn't been released yet. We're timing it to release it a few days before the talk, so the folks have an opportunity to read about it and possibly show up to the talk. But we could certainly try and scoop the reporter since we know when she's going to push the story.
All right. So, once again, Black Hat, the corporate version of DEF CON, an annual security conference in the desert. And it's a lot of fun, and you'll definitely learn a lot about computer security quickly coming out to DEF CON. And you'll hear us talk about it many more times before July gets here. So, with that, Vlad, do you have any last words for our listeners?
No, let's just send out well wishes to our missing co-host today, and hopefully he can join us next week.
And once again, you're listening to Cyberwatch with the usual suspects, and we will have you listening next week.